The alarm screamed through the bridge of the salvage ship Mercy's Run. Captain Marcus Chun looked up from his coffee, eyes narrowing at the display. A distress signal. Ancient. Very ancient. Captain, that's a Varath signature, his first officer said, voice tight with disbelief. But that's impossible. The Varath have been extinct for 200 years. Marcus studied the data streaming across his screen. The signal pulsed weakly, like a dying heartbeat in the void. It came from deep space, far from any trade routes or colonies. Going there would burn fuel they couldn't afford to waste. The company would be furious. Set course, Marcus said quietly. Sir, we don't have the fuel margin for... I said set course. Marcus's voice was firm, but not unkind. Someone's alive out there. We don't leave people to die alone in the dark. The crew exchanged glances but obeyed. They knew their captain. Once Marcus Chen made up his mind about saving someone, nothing could stop him. 3 days later, they found it. The Varath ship hung in space like a crystal cathedral, beautiful even in death. Its hull was made of something that looked like frozen light, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Mercy's Run. Life signs? Marcus asked. 1. Very faint. And sir, there's something else. The readings show thousands of stasis pods. Most are failing. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Thousands of lives, hanging by a thread. Get me over there, now. The airlock hissed as Marcus stepped aboard the alien vessel. The interior was like walking through a frozen dream. Everything was smooth curves and soft light, so different from human ships with their hard angles and harsh lighting. The air tasted strange, metallic, and sweet at the same time. He found her in what looked like a command center. She was tall, taller than any human, and her skin had a faint crystalline quality that caught the light. Her eyes were the color of deep space, dark purple with flecks of silver. She was beautiful in a way that made Marcus's heart ache, like looking at a piece of art you could never own. She opened her eyes as he approached. For a moment, they stared at each other across the gulf of species and time. You are human, she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes. The soft flesh ones. You survived. You spread across the stars. My name is Marcus Chun. I'm captain of the salvage ship that picked up your distress signal. Are you injured? She sat up slowly, movements precise and controlled. I am Science Officer Kelsha of the Varath Preservation Fleet. I am surprised. When we entered hibernation, humans were barely reaching their own moon. Now you travel the deep void. How long have we slept? 200 years, Marcus said, gently. Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe? It was hard to read alien expressions. 200 years. The galaxy must be very different now. It is. But right now, we need to focus on your ship. Your hibernation systems are failing. I'm reading critical malfunctions across most of your stasis pods. Kelsha stood, and Marcus saw how weak she was. She swayed, caught herself on a console. How many pods are stable? Marcus checked his scanner. Maybe 10%. The rest. You have 72 hours at most before cascade failure. 10,000 Varath sleep on this ship, Kelsha said, her voice hollow. The last 10,000. We are all that remains of our species. When the Great Silence came, when the galaxy tore itself apart in war, we chose to leave. To sleep until the madness passed. I volunteered to remain conscious, to guide our journey. She looked at Marcus with those ancient eyes. I have been alone for 200 years, keeping my people alive. I cannot fail them now. You won't, Marcus said. My crew and I will help you repair the systems. Why? Kelsha asked. We have nothing to offer you. Logic dictates you should take what data you can and leave. You waste resources on a species already dead. Marcus thought about his daughter, about the colony ship malfunction that killed her, about arriving too late, always too late. Because someone should be here. Because no one should die alone in the dark. That's reason enough. For the next 20 hours, Marcus and his crew worked frantically. But the Verith technology was too advanced, too different. Human parts didn't fit. Human power systems were incompatible. They needed components. They simply didn't have. Kel single quotes. Shaw showed Marcus data files. Technology that could revolutionize human space travel. Take this, she said. It is worth billions in your currency. Take it and go. There is no logical reason to stay and die with us. Marcus's crew gathered on the bridge. They looked at him, then at the data. One of them spoke up. Captain, we can't fix this. We don't have the parts, the knowledge, or the time. This tech could set up our families for life. We should go. Marcus looked at each of them. Good people, all of them. Practical people. They were right from a certain point of view. Then go, he said quietly. Take the ship. Take the data. Get it home safely. What about you, sir? I'm staying. Someone has to try, even if the odds are impossible. He smiled sadly. Tell my brother I'm sorry. Tell him I couldn't leave them. His first officer stepped forward. Marcus, this is insane. You'll die here for nothing. Maybe, but at least I'll die trying. At least you won't be alone. He turned to Kelsha. I can't promise I'll succeed. I can't even promise I know what I'm doing. But I'll stay. I'll try. That's all I can offer. The crew left, arguing until the last moment. The airlock sealed. The Mercy's Run pulled away, heading for home. Kelsha watched the human ship disappear into the stars. Then she turned to Marcus. You gave up everything. Wealth, safety, life itself. For strangers. For aliens. This is not logical. Marcus pulled off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. No, he agreed. It's not. Now, show me these hibernation systems. We have work to do. Kelsha stared at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 200 years, something very close to hope flickered in her ancient heart. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the mess of wires in front of him. Human cables and Verith crystal conduits didn't want to connect. He'd been at it for 6 hours straight, and his hands were shaking from exhaustion. You need to rest, Kelsha said from behind him. Your efficiency has decreased by 43% in the last hour. I'm fine, Marcus muttered, trying another configuration. You are not fine. Humans require sleep every 16 to 18 hours. You have been working for 24. This is not logical. Marcus laughed, though it came out more like a wheeze. Welcome to humanity. We do a lot of things that aren't logical. Kelsha tilted her head, a gesture Marcus was learning meant confusion. But why? Surely you understand that rest would improve your performance. The mathematics are simple. Yeah, but every minute I rest is a minute closer to your people dying. So I keep working. He connected 2 wires, and sparks flew. Marcus jerked his hand back with a curse. Kelsha moved faster than he thought possible. Her crystalline fingers gently took his hand, examining the burn. You injured yourself. This reduces efficiency further. It's just a small burn. I've had worse. But Marcus let her apply some kind of gel from her medical kit. It felt cool and immediately stopped the pain. I do not understand you, Kelsha said softly. The probability of success is 3.7%. You know this. Yet you damage yourself trying to achieve the impossible. Explain. Marcus flexed his hand, testing it. Because 3.7% is better than 0. Because miracles happen. Because sometimes you get lucky. He met her eyes, because hope isn't a calculation. Hope. Kelsha repeated the word like it was foreign. An emotional state based on desire rather than data. The Varath eliminated such inefficiencies from our genetics 800 years ago. That's sad, Marcus said. Hope is what keeps us going when everything says we should quit. They worked in silence for a while. Marcus noticed that Kelsha watched him constantly, studying his methods. She seemed fascinated by how he approached problems, using intuition and guesswork where she used pure mathematics. Tell me about the Great Silence, Marcus said, as he rewired another junction. What happened to the galaxy while your people slept? Kelsha's expression grew distant. We were peacekeepers once. The Varath maintained order across 700 systems. We were efficient, logical, fair. But then the younger races began to war. They fought over resources, over ideologies, over things we considered trivial. We tried to stop them. We failed. So you left? We chose survival over compromise. We saw that the galaxy was entering a dark age. War would consume everything. So we gathered our people, built this ship, and slept until the madness passed. She paused. We thought we were being logical. Now, I wonder if we were simply afraid. Marcus heard something in her voice. Something that didn't match what she said about Varath not having emotions. You've been alone for 200 years. That must have been hard. Loneliness is an emotional state. I should not experience it, but her voice cracked slightly. Yet I did. Every day, I walked these empty halls. Every day, I checked the pods, hoping all would wake someday. Every day, I was alone. I'm sorry, Marcus said. And he meant it. They managed to restore power to 2 more hibernation sections. 400 lives saved. But it wasn't enough. At this rate, they'd save maybe 3,000 before the whole system collapsed. Marcus was running on fumes now. His vision blurred. His hands fumbled with tools. Kelsha kept insisting he rest, but he refused. Then, the accident happened. Marcus was deep in the ship's power core, trying to reroute energy from non-essential systems. He didn't see the cascade failure coming. Didn't realize that removing one particular crystal would destabilize the entire grid. The explosion threw him backward. Electricity arced through his body. He screamed. Kelsha had a choice in that moment. She was working on hibernation pod 247, which contained 200 sleeping Varath. The pod was failing. She had maybe 30 seconds to complete the repair, or those 200 would die. She also had 30 seconds to reach Marcus before the electrical discharge killed him. 200 of her own people, or 1 alien human. The mathematics were simple. Kelsha ran toward Marcus. She pulled him from the power conduit, her crystalline body absorbing the electricity that would have killed him. She dragged him to safety, held him as he convulsed, whispered words in her own language that might have been prayers. Behind her, hibernation pod 247 failed. 200 Varath died in their sleep. When Marcus could breathe again, when his heart stopped racing, he saw Kelsha sitting against the wall. She was staring at her hands like she didn't recognize them. You saved me, Marcus said hoarsely. I killed 200 of my own people to save you, Kelsha whispered. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It was not what a Varath should do. She looked at him, and Marcus saw something he never expected to see in those alien eyes. Tears. Actual tears, crystalline and glowing faintly. What have you done to me, human? I chose 1 life over 200. I chose you. Marcus pulled himself up and sat beside her. You chose to save someone right in front of you instead of someone you couldn't reach. That's not wrong. That's human. But I'm not human. I am Varath. We are logical. We are efficient. We do not feel. We do not. She gestured helplessly at her own tears. We do not weep. Maybe your people engineer feelings out of your genetics, Marcus said gently. But maybe they didn't get rid of them completely. Maybe they just buried them deep. And maybe, after 200 years alone, after meeting someone who refuses to give up even when it's hopeless, maybe those feelings woke up. Kalsha looked at him. Really looked at him. This exhausted, injured, stubborn human who stayed when anyone sensible would have fled, who worked himself to collapse for strangers, who smiled even when facing certain death. "I do not understand you," she said again. But this time, it sounded different. Not confused, curious, maybe even fond. Join the club. Most humans don't understand humans either. Marcus checked his scanner. We have 48 hours left. We've saved 40% of the pods. We need to save at least 80% to give your species a real chance at survival. The probability of that is, I don't care about the probability, Marcus interrupted. I care about what's possible. And as long as we're breathing, anything is possible. Kalsha stood and offered him her hand. Marcus took it, and she pulled him to his feet. "You are the strangest being I have ever encountered, Marcus Chen. I'll take that as a compliment. Now come on. We have work to do." They walked back into the heart of the ship, side by side, human and Verith, logic and hope, working together against impossible odds. And for the first time in 200 years, Kalsha didn't feel alone. 24 hours remained, and Marcus was out of ideas. He sat in the ship's mess hall, staring at a plate of Verith nutrition paste that tasted like cardboard mixed with metal. Kalsha had insisted he eat something, and he was too tired to argue. "We cannot save them all," Kalsha said. She stood by the viewport, looking out at the stars. Her voice was calm, controlled. Back to pure logic. "We have restored 40% of the hibernation systems. That is 4,000 Verith. More than I hoped when I sent the distress signal. You should be proud." "Proud?" Marcus set down his spoon. 6,000 of your people are going to die, and you want me to be proud? You did everything possible. The mathematics were against us from the start. 4,000 is a success by any reasonable measure. I don't accept that." Marcus stood, even though his legs shook with exhaustion. "There has to be a way. Some trick we haven't thought of." There is not." Kalsha turned to face him. "I have run every calculation, every simulation. The ship's power grid cannot support more than 40% of the pods. This is physical law, not opinion. Even you cannot argue with physics, human." Marcus paced the small room. His mind raced, grasping at straws, at crazy ideas. What if we didn't try to power the pods? What if we just kept them cold? Cold. Yeah, the hibernation systems fail because they overheat. They need constant cooling. But what if we made the whole ship so cold that the pods didn't need active cooling? What if we turned the ship into a giant freezer? Kalsha accessed her internal computer, running numbers. The energy required to cool the entire ship to such temperatures would be enormous. We do not have sufficient power reserves. What if we used the ship itself? Tore out non-essential systems, used the materials to build heat sinks? Cannibalized the structure? Marcus knew he was reaching, but desperation made him bold. "You are suggesting we destroy the ship to save the people inside it? Why not? Once your people are awake, they won't need this ship anymore. Human colonies can house them until they rebuild. The ship is just metal and crystal. The people matter." Kalsha went very still. She computed for nearly a minute. The probability of success is 12%. The ship might tear itself apart. The stress could cause catastrophic failures. We could lose everyone, or we could save everyone. 12% is better than 0. You keep saying that. Better than 0. Better than nothing. As if hope alone can change mathematics. Marcus smiled, tired but genuine. Sometimes it can. Call it the human factor. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten. Kelsha studied him for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile touched her crystalline features. Very well. Show me your stupid human idea. The next hours were chaos. Marcus and Kelsha tore through the ship like hurricanes, identifying systems they could sacrifice. The beautiful crystal walls came down. The elegant power conduits were stripped. The art and culture of an entire civilization was reduced to raw materials. Kelsha worked alongside him, and Marcus noticed she no longer spoke in pure logic. She made intuitive leaps. She took risks. She hoped. "We are vandals," she said at one point, pulling down a wall covered in Vareth history. "Future generations will curse us for destroying these archives." "Future generations will exist because we destroyed these archives," Marcus countered. "That's what matters." They built the heat sink in the ship's core. It was ugly, crude, held together with human welding and Vareth crystal bonding. It looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed near it. "This is insane," Kelsha said, staring at their creation. "Yep, ready to turn it on." She met his eyes. "No, but let us do it anyway." Marcus threw the switch. The heat sink roared to life. The ship groaned, metal and crystal protesting as temperatures plummeted. Frost formed on every surface. The beautiful, elegant Vareth ship became a frozen tomb, but the hibernation pods stabilized. One by one, their readings shifted from critical to stable. Marcus and Kelsha monitored the systems, hardly daring to breathe. 50% stable. 60%. 70%. At 80%, something broke. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. A massive structural beam in the engineering section cracked, and suddenly they were venting atmosphere into space. "Seal the breach." Marcus shouted, already running. They made it to engineering in time to see the hull peeling away like paper. The cold had made the metal brittle. The stress was too much. Marcus grabbed emergency sealant and sprayed it into the crack, but it wasn't enough. The breach was spreading. "We need to shut down the heat sink," Kelsha said. "The ship cannot handle the strain. If we shut it down, the pods fail. If we do not, the ship tears apart and everyone dies." Marcus looked at the spreading crack, at the stars visible through the widening gap. His mind raced. There had to be a way. There was always a way. Then he saw it. The hull breach was near an old docking port. If they could seal the entire section, cut it away from the rest of the ship. "Help me seal this corridor," he said. They worked together, triggering emergency bulkheads, cutting off the damaged section from the rest of the ship. It meant sacrificing a third of the vessel, but it would stop the breach from spreading. The final bulkhead slammed shut just as the damaged section tore away completely. Through the viewport, they watched a huge chunk of the Vareth ship tumble into space. Marcus checked his scanner. 82% of pods still stable. "We did it. We actually did it." Then the next alarm sounded. The heat sink was working, but it was consuming power at an insane rate. They had maybe 6 hours before total power failure. And without power, the pods would fail immediately. "We need rescue," Kelsha said. "Now, the distress beacon is offline. We have no way to call for help." Marcus looked at the escape pod they'd seen earlier. Small, fast, could make it to a human outpost in maybe 4 hours. "One of us has to go," he said quietly. Kelsha nodded. "One of us must go for help while the other maintains the systems manually. The mathematics are clear. You should go. You're Vareth. You know your people's systems better. You can explain to rescuers what they need to bring." "No." Kelsha's voice was firm. "I am the logical choice to stay. I can interface directly with the ship's systems. You are better suited to convince humans to mount a rescue." Marcus shook his head. "Kelsha, you've been alone for 200 years. You shouldn't have to I have been alone for 200 years, she interrupted. I am accustomed to it. You are not. You are human. You meet others. That's not. Please. The words stopped him cold. Kelsha never said please. Please, Marcus. Let me do this. Let me save my people. I stayed conscious all this time for this purpose. Let me fulfill it. Marcus wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in her eyes. The acceptance. The peace. Okay, he said softly. I'll go. I'll bring back help. I promise. He moved toward the escape pod, gathering supplies. Kelsha watched him, her expression unreadable. Then, as he reached the airlock, she spoke. Marcus? Why do humans do this? Throw themselves at impossible odds? Fight when logic says to surrender? He turned to her. Because hope isn't a calculation, remember? Because someone has to try. Because mercy isn't efficient, but it's what makes us human. I think. Kelsha paused, struggling with words. I think I am beginning to understand. You do not do these things because they are logical. You do them because they have meaning. Because connection matters more than survival. Because being alive is not the same as living. Marcus smiled. Yeah, exactly that. Thank you, Marcus-chan, for teaching me this. For staying when anyone else would have fled. Showing me what it means to hope. Thank you for letting me try. He climbed into the escape pod. The hatch started to close, and Kelsha realized something. Something that made her crystalline heart crack with an emotion she'd never felt before. She didn't want him to go. She didn't want to be alone again. Wait. The word left Kelsha's mouth before she could stop it. The escape pod hatch froze. Half-dash closed. Marcus looked at her through the narrowing gap. Kelsha? What's wrong? Everything was wrong. Everything was breaking inside her. Feelings she didn't have words for flooding through her crystalline body. For 800 years, the Earth had been a species of pure logic. For 200 years, she had been alone with her calculations and her duty dot. And now, watching this human prepare to leave, something in her shattered. She started, then stopped. How did you explain feelings you weren't supposed to have? I do not want you to go. Marcus climbed back out of the pod. Kelsha, we talked about this. Someone has to get help. I know. The logic is sound, but... She looked at her hands, watched them tremble. I am afraid. Marcus walked to her slowly, like approaching something fragile. Afraid of what? Of being alone again. The words came out as a whisper. For 200 years, I walked these halls alone. I spoke to no one. I touched no one. I watched my people sleep and wondered if I would die before they woke. Every day was silence. Every day was emptiness. And then you came. She looked up at him, and tears ran down her face. Real tears that shouldn't exist. You stayed when you should have left. You worked when you should have rested. You hoped when hope was illogical. You made me feel things I thought my species had forgotten how to feel. And now, just when I remembered what it means to not be alone, you are leaving. Marcus reached out and gently took her hand. I'm coming back. I promise. I'll bring help and you do not understand. Kelsha pulled away, pacing the small space. Let me tell you about the great silence. About what really happened to my people. She moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars. The Varth were not always as we are now. Once, millennia ago, we felt as you do. We loved. We hoped. We feared. We were alive in the way you are alive. What changed? We became advanced. We solved hunger, disease, death. We mastered technology and science. And someone asked the question, why do we still suffer? Why do we feel pain when pain is inefficient? Why do we grieve when grief serves no purpose? Why hope when we can calculate? Why love when love makes us vulnerable? Kelsha turned to face him. So we changed ourselves. We edited our genetics, removed the messy emotions, kept only logic and reason. We became perfect, efficient, clean. And? Marcus asked quietly. And we started to die. Her voice cracked. Not quickly. Not obviously. But slowly, over centuries, the Earth began to vanish. Our birth rates dropped. Our people lost interest in the future. We maintained our civilization perfectly, but we stopped building new things. Stopped exploring. Stopped reaching for the stars. Because without emotion, there was no drive to grow? Worse than that. Without emotion, there was no meaning. We existed, but we did not live. We maintained, but we did not create. We survived, but we did not thrive. She laughed bitterly. We thought we were evolving beyond our primitive feelings. We were actually dying out. The Great Silence wasn't a war, Marcus said, understanding. It was civilizations like yours, all making the same choice. Yes, across the galaxy, species reached a certain level of advancement and faced the same question, logic or emotion. Most chose logic. Most quietly faded away. The galaxy is full of perfect, logical civilizations that no longer exist. She walked back to him. Only the chaotic species survive. Only the ones who keep their messy emotions, their illogical hopes, their inefficient love. Only the ones who haven't optimized away their humanity. Or their HFY, in your case. Despite everything, Kelsha smiled. Yes, that is why when I woke and saw humans had spread across the stars, I was shocked. You should have been conquered by more advanced species. You should have been absorbed by more efficient civilizations. But you are everywhere, growing, thriving, alive in a way the galaxy has not seen in millennia. Because we're too stubborn to know when to quit? Because you care about things that don't make sense to care about. Because you stay when you should leave. Because you hope when hope is illogical. Because you... She looked at him, really looked at him. Because you make me feel things I should not feel. And I realize now that these feelings are not weakness. They are strength. They are life itself. Marcus stepped closer to her. What are you saying, Kelsha? I am saying that I do not want to send you away to save myself. I do not want to return to being alone, being logical, being efficient, but empty. I am saying that these past days with you, working together, talking, laughing at your terrible jokes, feeling frustrated and hopeful and alive, these have been the most real days of my 800 years of existence. She took his hands in hers. You asked me earlier why the Verith engineered out our emotions. I know now. It is because feelings hurt. They make us vulnerable. They make us do illogical things. But they also make us real. They make existence meaningful. And I do not want to lose this. I do not want to lose you. Kelsha. Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. I know the mathematics. I know one of us must leave for help. I know you are the logical choice to go. I know that my feelings are interfering with sound judgment. But I have spent 200 years making the logical choice, the efficient choice, the right choice. And I was alone and empty and dead inside. She pulled him closer. Just this once, I want to make the illogical choice. I want to choose what my heart wants instead of what my mind says. Even if it is foolish. Even if it is wrong. What does your heart want? Marcus asked softly. Kelsha looked at him, this strange, wonderful, impossible human who had crashed into her life and woken something she thought was dead forever. This being who showed her that survival without meaning was just a slow death. This friend who stood with her against impossible odds and smiled while doing it. I want you to stay, she whispered. Here, with me. Until the end, whatever that end may be. I want to face the darkness together rather than alone. I want to know that if these are my last hours, I spent them with someone who matters. Someone who taught me what it means to be alive." She stepped back, giving him space. Giving him the choice. "I know I have no right to ask this. I know it is selfish and illogical. I know you could save yourself, could bring back help, could survive. But I am asking anyway, because you taught me that hope is not a calculation. Because you taught me that some things matter more than survival." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper, and more tears fell down her crystalline face. "Will you stay, human? Will you stay with me, here in the dark, even though it makes no sense? Even though you could save yourself? Will you choose connection over survival, just as you have shown me to do? Will you stay?" The question hung in the air between them. The escape pod waited, door open, offering salvation. The ship groaned around them, dying slowly. Marcus looked at Kelsha, at this ancient being who had just learned to feel, to hope, to care about something beyond pure logic, who was asking him to make the most illogical choice of all. He looked at the escape pod, at survival, at the smart choice. Then he looked back at Kelsha, and he smiled. "You want to know something?" he said. "I never actually planned to go." Kelsha stared at Marcus, her expression frozen in confusion. "What?" Marcus walked away from the escape pod and sealed the hatch with a firm press of the button. "I wasn't going to leave. I was going to put you in that pod and send you for help while I stayed here to maintain the systems. But that makes no sense. You have a better chance of convincing humans to mount a rescue. I said this already." The logic was clear. "Yeah, well, I wasn't planning to argue with you about it. I was going to trick you into the pod and launch it before you could protest." He smiled sheepishly. "Guess that plan fell apart. You would have sacrificed yourself? Condemned yourself to certain death. Someone had to stay. Someone had to keep the systems running. And Kelsha," Marcus moved closer to her, "you've been alone for 200 years. You've carried the weight of your entire species through the darkness. You deserve to be the one who lives. You deserve to see your people wake up. That is not logical." "No, it's not." Marcus took her hands again. "You asked me if I would stay. You asked if I would choose connection over survival. But Kelsha, I already made that choice. I made it when I sent my crew away. I made it when I stayed to help you. I made it every moment since, every time I could have given up, but didn't." He looked into her eyes, those strange and beautiful alien eyes that had learned to cry. "You want to know why? Not because of duty. Not because it's the right thing to do. Not even because of honor or nobility or any of that noble nonsense. Then why? Because where else would I want to be?" Marcus's voice was soft but fierce. "You asked me to stay. But Kelsha, I was never planning to leave. Not really. Because for the first time since my daughter died, I'm not alone in the dark either." Kelsha went very still. "You've been alone for 200 years, Marcus continued. "You've carried impossible burdens. You've learned to hope, to feel, to care about an illogical human who should mean nothing to you. You've shown me that even after everything you've lost, you can still find meaning, still find connection, still find a reason to fight." He smiled, and it was the saddest, happiest smile she'd ever seen. "So yes, I'll stay. Not as a human. Not as a rescuer doing his duty. Not as someone trying to be a hero. But as your friend. As someone who understands what it's like to be alone. As someone who wants to spend whatever time we have left with someone who finally understands why we have to try, even when trying makes no sense." Kelsha's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Marcus hadn't caught her. They sank to the floor together, two beings from different worlds, holding each other in the dying light of a doomed ship. "I am speechless," Kelsha finally whispered. In 800 years, no one has ever chosen me over survival, over logic, over life itself. Then 800 years of people were idiots. She laughed. Actually laughed. It was a strange crystalline sound, rusty from disuse but beautiful. You are the most impossible being I have ever encountered, Marcus Chin. I'll take that as the highest compliment. He brushed a crystalline tear from her cheek. So, we're both staying. We're both going to maintain the systems as long as we can. And maybe, just maybe, we'll figure out a miracle. The probability. I don't care about the probability. I care about the fact that we're together. That neither of us has to face the darkness alone. They sat there for a moment, just breathing, just being. Then Marcus's communicator beeped. He pulled it out, confused. There shouldn't be any signals out here. The voice that came through was his first officer. Captain, you stubborn, self-sacrificing idiot. I hope you're still alive to hear this. Marcus and Kelsha scrambled to their feet. This is Chun. What's happening? We ignored your orders, sir. Turned the ship around about an hour after leaving. Called in every favor we had. We've got 3 other salvage ships and a colony engineering team on the way. ETA 45 minutes. You. What? You taught us that no one dies alone in the dark, Captain. That includes you. There was a pause. That includes your new friend, too. We're bringing everything we need to repair those hibernation systems properly. All of them. Marcus looked at Kelsha. She looked back at him. For a moment, neither could speak. Then Kelsha started crying again. But this time, they were tears of joy. The rescue was controlled chaos. Human engineers swarmed the Vereth ship, their crude but effective solutions mixing with Kelsha's elegant designs. What the heat sink couldn't solve, human ingenuity and Vereth knowledge combined to fix. 23 hours later. Every single hibernation pod was stabilized and being transferred to human medical ships for proper care. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Mercy's Run, watching the operation. Kelsha stood beside him, unwilling to leave his side. 10,000 Vereth, she said softly. All saved. All alive. Thanks to you. You kept them alive for 200 years. Thanks to us, she corrected. I could not have done this alone. Marcus's first officer approached. Sir, the Vereth are asking about technology transfers. They're offering their entire database as payment. No, Kelsha said firmly. It is a gift. A gift between friends. Between people who chose connection over cold transaction. The officer grinned. I like her, Captain. She's learning from you. God help us all, Marcus muttered, but he was smiling. Over the following months, the Vereth were integrated into galactic civilization. They settled on a beautiful world near human space, a planet of crystal mountains and purple skies. Kelsha stayed with Marcus, serving as an ambassador between their species. But more than that, she became his friend. His partner. The person who understood what it meant to choose hope over logic. The Vereth began to change. Slowly, carefully, they started to reverse the genetic modifications that had stripped away their emotions. Kelsha led this effort, teaching her people what she had learned from one stubborn human. Feelings hurt, she told the Vereth Council. They make us vulnerable. They make us do illogical things. But they also make us real. They make existence meaningful. We did not fail as a species because we lacked logic. We failed because we forgot how to live. 6 months after the rescue, a memorial was held for the Vereth who had died during the 200-year journey. Marcus stood in the crowd as Kelsha spoke to her people. We thought logic would save us, she said, her voice carrying across the gathered thousands. We were wrong. We thought emotions were weakness. We were wrong. We thought survival was the highest goal. We were wrong about that most of all. She looked directly at Marcus. We live today because one being cared when caring made no sense. Because one human stayed when anyone else would have calculated the odds and left. Because one person taught me that hope is not a calculation, that mercy is not efficient, but that these illogical, inefficient, impossible things are what make life worth living. Humans have a saying, hope against hope. They try when trying is foolish. They care when caring is inefficient. They stay when staying means death. And because of this, they thrive. They spread across the stars. They are vibrantly, chaotically, beautifully alive. My people asked me once, what makes humans special? I know the answer now. She walked to Marcus and took his hand. They stay. When any logical being would calculate the odds and leave. When any efficient species would preserve themselves, humans stay. Not because they are too stupid to know better, but because they are wise enough to know that some things matter more than survival. That connection matters more than safety. That living matters more than simply existing. The crowd was silent. The Varath nearly died because we forgot this truth. We exist today because one human remembered it for us. We live today because someone showed us that hope is not a weakness. That caring is not inefficient. That staying, even when it makes no sense, is the most logical thing of all. She turned to Marcus, this being who had changed everything, who had taught an ancient species to feel again. Thank you, Marcus-chun, for staying, for teaching us to live again, for showing us what it means to be truly alive. Marcus smiled, that crooked human smile that Kelsha had grown to love. Thank you for asking me to stay, for giving me a reason to hope again, for reminding me that even in the darkest night, we don't have to be alone. They stood together as the memorial ended, as the Varath celebrated life instead of mourning death. Human and alien, logic and hope. Different species, different worlds, different ways of thinking, but friends, partners, two souls who had faced the darkness together and found light. And in the end, that made all the difference.